Jeff looked at me. "But most days," I said, "I think we're going to get Eddie Lang. One day, Eddie Lang will be in prison for a very long time." Chapter 5. Looking for Reasons. That night at about 9:30, Janine Anderson's parents flew into Denver International Airport. They were returning early from their holiday in Italy. A police car drove them to Pinecrest Hospital. They had to see their daughter's body to see that it really was Janine. The Andersons were staying at the Pine Lodge, too, and late in the evening, at about 11 o'clock, Bill Gershon brought them to the hotel. "I'm so sorry," I said to them. "I'll try to make this quick." Jean and Loretta Anderson were both 40 to 45, well-dressed, rich Texans. Janine's mother soon went to her room and I talked to the father. Gene Anderson was a Texas oil man, a man who was now very rich, but who started life on a farm, a ranch, near Houston. "I just can't believe it," he said again and again. "She was so young, so intelligent. Who did this, Detective Lane? Who killed my baby?" "I don't know, Mr. Anderson," I said, "but I am going to find out." "I hope so, Detective Lane. I really hope so." "But I need your help, Mr. Anderson," I said. "Anything I can do," he said. "Well, there is one thing," I said. "She was studying to become a journalist, right?" "That's right," he said. "And she was an A student." He smiled for the first time. "She was a really good writer," he said. "All her teachers said she could be a really good journalist one day." Gene Anderson tried to stop himself from crying. I waited for a few minutes. "Mr. Anderson, Janine's friend Jeff told me that she was writing something for a university competition," I said. "Yes," said the dead girl's father. "And she really wanted to win. She wanted to be a journalist more than anything in the world, and she knew that it was a good start. She told me something about it at Christmas." "Did she tell you what she was writing about?" I asked. "No, not really, ma'am," said Gene Anderson. "But I think it was something big." I looked at Gene Anderson. He went on. "Daddy," she told me, "this story's so big, it's going to get me the journalism prize, and maybe somebody will go to prison for a very long time." "But she didn't tell you who the somebody was?" I asked him. "No," he said. "She didn't. She was working on it, getting it right. Hey, you're not saying—" "I'm not saying anything, Mr. Anderson," I replied. "Nothing at all." The next morning I got up early and went out. It was very cold in the early morning. The snow was hard, and it was difficult to stay on your feet. I thought again about what Gene Anderson told me. "Somebody will go to prison for a very long time," his daughter said to him. Who was it? What was Janine writing about? I looked for Pinecrest Town Library, the library where Janine Anderson went to study for her story. Then I saw a building with a big sign outside. It said, "Books can change your life." I went into the library. The young woman at the desk had big hair and a big smile. "Good morning. Can I help you?" she said. "Yes," I said, and showed her my police badge. "Detective Flick Lane, Denver Police Department. It's about the death of Janine Anderson." She stopped smiling. "Oh, yes, poor girl. It's terrible." "Did she ever come here?" I asked. "Yes, she did," said the young woman. "She mostly wanted to look at pages from old newspapers." "She could take books and newspapers away?" I asked. "She had a letter from her university," said the young woman, "so she could take newspapers and books out. She was a student, you know." "Yes," I said. Do you have a list of the newspapers and books she took? Oh, yes, said the librarian. Would you like to see it? Yes, please, I said. The young woman turned to the computer in front of her. Here, she said. Have a look. First, there was the dead girl's name and home address in Texas. Then there was a list of books. All of them were about Colorado and land development. Then there was a list of about 10 newspapers that Janine took from the library in the last 2 years. I asked to see them all. In every newspaper, there was a story about ski resorts and hotels. One of them talked about a famous movie star. The movie star, Susan Hunter, who lives in Pine Crest, said, "People have always come to Colorado to get rich fast. In the past, it was gold and silver. Today, most of the gold and silver has gone. The new gold is land that can be used for ski resorts and hotels. Land developers make millions of dollars from this land. Today in Colorado, there's a fight between big business and nature lovers who want to stop this. I am fighting for Colorado." I closed the newspaper. Big business, I thought. Big money. Every year in Colorado, there were more houses, more stores, and more ski resorts. More and more people trying to make money. I knew that people who lived here in the Rocky Mountains often got angry. "This is nature," they said. "We don't need more buildings. We don't need more ski resorts." But it was like standing on the beach and trying to make the sea go back. Chapter 6. A Movie Star. I called Gershon on my cell phone. "Susan Hunter," I said. "She seems to be very active in the fight against land development." "Yeah, she was," he said, "but she hasn't done anything for a while." "Where does she live?" I asked. "Big house up on Hillside," he said. Hillside was the part of Pine Crest where all the famous people lived. "Good," I said. "I'll go to see her." "Oh, and did you hear from the hospital?" "Yes," he said. "And?" I asked. "Working with Gershon was slow." "Well, they are sure now that it was murder," he said. "And it was a man." "What time did she die?" I asked. "Between 10:30 and 11, he said. Janine Anderson died minutes before Teresa Douglas went to the pool and found her body, and probably minutes after the waiters at the Columbine left. I put my phone away and felt my gun in my inside pocket. At 3 o'clock that afternoon, I parked my Chevy next to Susan Hunter's Jaguar outside her beautiful big house. Movie stars, I thought. They don't like development, but they live in big houses. I got out of my car and looked at the mountains. I saw that there were cameras everywhere around the house. A very tall man came to the door. I could see that he had a gun under his jacket. I showed him my City of Denver police badge. "Good afternoon, Detective Lane," he said, smiling. He took me into the star's living room. A few moments later, she walked in. Susan Hunter was a beautiful woman in her 30s, with black hair and clear blue eyes. She was dressed in gray trousers and a red blouse with a high neck. We sat together in the very big living room drinking tea. Around the room, there were photos of the star with other famous movie stars. There were also photos of her husband and 3 children. "Yes, in the past it was gold and silver, Detective Lane," she said, taking a drink of her tea. "Now it's ski resorts. There's always some reason why we need land." I waited for more. "But," she said, "it can't go on like this. The land is not ours. It's for our children and our grandchildren to enjoy. This is such a beautiful place." Yes, it's lovely, I agreed. We looked out of the window. The sun was starting to go down over the Rocky Mountains, and the sky was pink and orange. But ski resorts mean big money, she went on. And it's difficult to stop people buying and developing the land. Her voice became very quiet. Look at Redridge, she said. Oh, yes, I said. Redridge was a small town 30 miles away. It was an old silver town. Well, she said, 3 years ago Redridge was a small, quiet town. Now it's a very big resort with hotels, expensive stores and restaurants, and ski runs everywhere. It has thousands of visitors every year. So? I asked. Isn't that good for the town? Susan Hunter laughed. Have you seen it? She asked. Tell me more, I said. The government land office, she said, bought the Redridge land 50 years ago. Then, in 1997, they, the GLO, wanted to sell the land. They knew they could sell it as a vacation resort and get a lot of money. I knew that this happened a lot. The government was always trying to find ways to make money. Susan Hunter went on. So they asked vacation resort companies to tell them about their plans for the town. There were 5 big companies that wanted to develop Redridge. The company that won was Alpine Resorts. Their boss is a guy called Ricky Klein. Ricky Klein? I asked. He's always in the newspapers, she said. He's very rich, and he has hundreds of businesses. Alpine Resorts was already famous for Alpine Resorts, Oregon, which destroyed beautiful natural forests. 3 of the other 4 companies all had good plans for Redridge. They wanted to save its natural beauty, she went on. So why did the GLO choose the worst plan? I asked. That's the big question, Detective Lane, said Susan Hunter. I guess that Ricky Klein gave someone in the GLO a lot of money. Money? A bribe? I asked. Susan Hunter nodded. A bribe, she said. Millions of dollars, I guess. And why wasn't it in the newspapers? I asked. I mean, you knew about it. Who else? The GLO kept everything quiet until the last minute, she said. Then it was too late. My group was called Save Colorado. We knew about the bribe from someone who worked for the GLO, but we don't know who took the bribe. I looked at her. Did you know Janine Anderson? I asked. Yes, I did a little, she said quietly. She came here to talk to me last year. I told her what I knew. That's it, I thought. Janine Anderson found out the name of the person in the government land office who took the money. It was quiet for a few moments. And what about Pine Crest? I asked. Well, Susan Hunter said, the next Alpine Resorts development will be in Pine Crest later this year. What happened to Redridge will happen here. They'll kill its natural beauty. She smiled sadly. And no one can save it. I stood up to go. At the door, I turned round. There's one thing I don't understand, I said. You mean, why don't I do something about this? Why didn't I tell the police before now? She asked. She pulled down the neck of her red blouse. On her neck, very near her throat, there was a big scar. From a knife. Detective Lane, I have 3 children, a wonderful husband, and my work, she said. I don't want to die. What happened? I asked. It was a year ago. Oh, I can't say who it was, she said. It happened at night and I didn't see his face. But I'm sure it was because of all this. These are dangerous days. We must be very careful. Yeah, dangerous days, I thought. I felt my gun under my jacket and left the movie star's house. Chapter 7. A Visit to Red Ridge. I drove away from Susan Hunter's house and back to my hotel. I thought about my talk with the movie star. Ricky Klein of Alpine Resorts gave someone in the government land office a bribe to take the worst plan for Red Ridge. And Janine Anderson knew all about it. But who was it, and how did Janine find out? I went back to my room and called Gershon. Bill, I want a full list of people in the government land office since 1996. Can you ask one of your men to get it for me? I guess so, said Gershon. Same old Gershon. What was wrong with the guy? The next morning I woke up early. I picked up my gun. I remembered Susan Hunter's question about Red Ridge. Have you seen it? It was time to visit Red Ridge. I wanted to see it for myself. I got in the Chevy and drove the 30 miles to the town. Welcome to Red Ridge, home of Alpine Resorts, Colorado, said the sign as I drove in. The town was busy with people on vacation, skiers mostly. On Main Street, there were some stores and restaurants. Then, at the end of the street, I found the beginning of Alpine Resorts, Colorado. At the gate was a man in a blue uniform. Good morning. How can I help you? He asked. He smiled and showed very white teeth. Well, I said, I'm just visiting, you know, and I'd like to take a look. Of course, he smiled. I'll ask someone to show you around. I waited. He talked to someone on the phone. A few minutes later, a young blonde woman walked up to me. She smiled a lot, too. Good morning, she said, shaking my hand. My name is Tina Nielsen from Alpine Resorts. Let me show you around our beautiful resort. We started walking. Alpine Resorts, Colorado was almost like a small city. When you went through the big gate, there were a lot of different buildings. There were 3 swimming pools, 4 hotels, vacation homes, restaurants, and ski rental. It was very, very big. We have the complete vacation here, smiled Tina. You can do everything. You don't have to leave Alpine Resorts. I looked around. Many of the buildings were so big that you couldn't see the mountains. Yes, she went on. It's a vacation for the whole family, and the skiing is very good. We have all the ski runs in Red Ridge right here. You mean, I said, if I want to ski, I have to stay here. Well, she said, of course you can ski just for the day, but the ski runs are ours. I mean, Alpine Resorts. And how much is a ski pass? I asked. It's $300 a day, she said. $300. That was double the cost of a ski pass in Pine Crest. Alpine Resorts was very expensive. Someone was making a lot of money. But why don't you try it? She said. Well, I'm a little busy. I started. Come on, she said. We'll be happy to give you a half-price ski pass for the morning. That will be just $75. Well, okay, I said. I could ski for an hour or 2, I thought. I needed some time to think. I went to the ski rental and got some skis, boots, and poles. I went up the mountain on a ski lift and spent an hour or 2 skiing the lower runs. It was a beautiful day to be on the mountains, but from the top I could see how big Alpine Resorts really was. At about 11:30, I went into a cafe halfway up the mountain. There were a lot of other skiers there. I drank my coffee, took my ski run map out of my pocket and looked at it. Up above the cafe, there were some difficult black runs with interesting names like Mad Dog and Killer Run. I wanted to try them. and I wanted to get away from the people. I needed to think. I took the mountaintop ski lift up another 1,000 feet. Here, at 10,500 feet, the world was white and quiet. It was very cold. There were almost no people, just a few figures far away. Most skiers stayed down below. I felt alone. I put my hand in the pocket on the inside of my coat and felt my gun. I wanted to go up even higher, to 12,000 feet, almost to the top of the mountain. I started to walk slowly to the summit ski lift. Suddenly, I heard somebody behind me. "Detective Lane," said a man's voice. I turned around. The man was wearing a black ski mask. I couldn't see his face, just his brown eyes. I moved away from the man quickly, but the man came closer to me and said in my ear, "Turn around, detective. We're going to get on the ski lift together." I felt something hard in my back. It felt like a gun. There were no people, anywhere, just the man with the gun and me. "And don't do anything stupid," he said, "or I'll kill you." Chapter 8. Dangerous Days. "You can't do this," I said to the man. "Be quiet and get on the ski lift," the man said. He pushed me. The ski lift had a seat for 2 people. The man pushed me into the seat and then he got in next to me. I looked around, but there was nobody up here. The ski lift went up to the top of the mountain. I looked at the man, at his brown eyes. He was slim. Was he the man at the Columbine? "Give me your gun," he said. "My gun?" I said. "Come on," he said. "I know you're carrying a gun." I looked down. We were 30 feet over the snow. "And don't do anything stupid," he said. I put my hand inside my coat and felt my gun. I took it out and gave it to him. "And now," said the man, putting my gun in his pocket, "you're going to fall. You're going to fall from the ski lift." "You're crazy," I said. "They'll catch you." "I'll just say that you fell," he said. "Anyway, I don't know you, and you don't know me, do you?" I thought fast. "I know you work for Ricky Klein," I said, taking a chance. I needed time, and I wanted him to talk. The man looked at me. "You're smart," he said. "And Janine Anderson?" I asked. "Did you kill her?" "We had to," he said. "She knew too much. She asked too many questions, and she was very stupid. She wanted to tell everyone about it." "How did you know that she was alone in the swimming pool?" I asked. "I watched her," he said. "Watched her for days." "From the Columbine restaurant," I said. "Yes, she often went to the pool alone in the evenings. It was easy. I just went into the hotel through the parking lot." Yes, I thought, it couldn't be easier. "And then you took her notebook?" I asked. "Do you think I'm crazy? Of course I took her notebook. I burned it. I didn't want him to stop." "And she knew the name of the man in the government land office?" I asked quickly. "The man who took a bribe from Ricky Klein to let him build Alpine Resorts, Colorado?" "Yes, detective," he said. "The big boss, Big CJ." "Big CJ? Who's that?" I asked. "Enough questions," said the man. "I just do the killing, detective." I looked down. We were very high. The snow and the trees were a long way down. I could see 2 skiers on the mountain, but they were very far away. I couldn't shout. I couldn't do anything. "You're next, Detective Lane," he said. "Time to die." I looked down again. It was a long way down, and he was trying to push me. I had to do something, and I had to do it now. The gunman moved to lift up the bar on the ski lift. Quickly, I moved forward and hit him in his face with my right hand. At the same time, I hit his hand with the gun in it with my left hand. The gun flew out of his hand and fell. It made no noise as it fell into the snow far below. "You," he started, "you," but it was too late. I hit him on the back of his head, pushed him, and he fell. Down, down, down. I looked down and watched him. His skis were heavy, and he fell fast. He fell into the trees far down below. I pulled down the bar. The ski lift went on moving, up, up. It was quiet again. The only thing I could hear was the sound of my heart. Chapter 9. A Lot to Lose. "Whiskey, please," I said to Bill Gershon. I sat down. It was 9 o'clock that evening. We were in his office. I needed a drink. Gershon took the whiskey from his cupboard. I smiled at him. "Just like Leo," I said. "Do all chiefs of police have whiskey in their cupboards?" Gershon smiled and put the whiskey down on the little table in front of me. I took a drink of the whiskey. It was good. I looked at Gershon. I was alive. "Tony Rizzo," I said to Gershon, "what did you find out about him?" The only thing I knew about the gunman was his name. The police found his body in the snow. Tony Rizzo was the name on the driver's license in his pocket. "Tony Rizzo came from New Mexico," said Gershon. "He was a hitman for anybody who paid him. A hitman, a killer. And Ricky Klein had enough money to pay him, I thought." Gershon went on. "He spent 4 years in prison near Santa Fe, New Mexico, from 1993 to 1997 for killing a security guard." "Only 4 years?" I asked. "He got out," Gershon said. "His friends helped him. He jumped out of a window and onto a furniture truck." I looked at Gershon. He was almost enjoying himself, I thought. Well, it was different from parking tickets. "Anyway," I said, "I got everything from him." "The whole story?" asked Gershon. "Well, almost everything," I said. "I got Rizzo to talk on the ski lift. He killed Janine Anderson, and Ricky Klein was behind it." "Wow," said Gershon. "You're good," I smiled. "That's the nicest thing you've said to me, Bill," I said. Gershon looked at me and smiled. Maybe we were becoming friends at last. "But there's someone else," I went on. "Someone Rizzo called the big boss, Big CJ. Janine Anderson knew a lot. Everything, I think. About Klein, how he gave a lot of money to this Big CJ, this man who was in the government land office." "Government land office," said Bill Gershon suddenly. He put his hand in his pocket and took out about 5 pieces of paper. "I forgot. Here are the names." I took the papers from Gershon and put them on the table in front of me. I read through them. I was looking for a famous name. A few minutes later, I looked up at Gershon. "Bill, there's one name on here that—" "Yes, I know," said Gershon. His eyes were big and round. "Governor Clark Johnson, a member of the GLO." "But it can't be," I said. "Clark Johnson, CJ, the governor of Colorado, and the man who everyone said was the next president of the United States." I drank my whiskey. Now I could see everything. "Janine Anderson had enough to send Klein to prison for 20 years, I said to Bill. "And she had enough to finish Governor Johnson. She wanted to write all about it. Of course she had to die." "But how did Janine know about Clark Johnson?" "Maybe she guessed at first," I said. "She knew that it must be someone important in the GLO, someone who needed a lot of money." "Wow," said Gershon. If this is true, it's big. Yes, I said, it's big. Johnson was in the government land office when Klein built Alpine Resorts Colorado in Red Ridge. Johnson needed money. He wanted to become governor. So Klein said, "You let me build Alpine Resorts," said Gershon, "and I'll give you money." "A lot of money. Millions of dollars, probably," I said. "We can look at his bank account easily enough." "And then Johnson wanted to become president," said Gershon. "Yes," I said. I think Janine really did have a big story. The biggest. The next president of the United States took money from Ricky Klein to let Klein build a new Alpine Resorts. What was bigger than that? But now we've got enough to send Klein to prison for a very long time, I said. And I think we can get Clark Johnson, too. Wow, said Bill. Yes, I said. Wow. Chapter 10. The Big Boss. That's the story, I said to Jeff Mason. Jeff now knew everything about Alpine Resorts and Ricky Klein, and about Governor Clark Johnson. So that's why poor Janine died, he said, because of Clark Johnson. Yes, and now we need to get Johnson, I said. What about Klein? Asked Jeff. We can't find him, I said. He knows about Rizzo and he's gone. The police are still looking for him. We're going to get Johnson, I went on, and I need your help. An hour later, Jeff called Johnson's office. I listened to the conversation on another phone. I want to speak to Governor Johnson, said Jeff. I'm sorry, but the governor is busy now, said a young woman. Can I help? Yes, said Jeff. You can tell the governor that I want to talk about my friend Janine Anderson and the money Governor Johnson took from Mr. Ricky Klein. Jeff gave the woman his hotel name and his telephone number. Now we just had to wait. We had to wait for Johnson's new hitman. Tony Rizzo was dead, but I was sure that Clark Johnson had another hitman, another killer. We waited in Jeff's room. It was dark. Jeff was on the bed. Two of Gershon's men waited near the window. They had their guns. I was behind the door with my gun. We waited 1 hour, 2 hours. It was late at night and the hotel was quiet. Then I heard a noise outside the door. Somebody was trying to get in. The door opened and I could see a man. I moved fast from behind the door. Then I hit him over the back of his head with my gun. He fell to the floor like a tree. He didn't move. I turned on the light. Gershon's men came out with their guns and stood around him. One of them took the hitman's gun from his hand. Jeff got up from the bed and came over. I looked at the man on the floor. He was wearing black clothes, and he had a black ski mask over his head. I took it off and looked at the man's face. I turned cold. I couldn't speak. Jeff looked at me. Do you know him? He asked. Yes, I said quietly. It's Eddie Lang, the man who killed Scott. Tell me about Governor Clark Johnson, I said to Eddie Lang. He's behind this, right? Eddie Lang looked up and saw all the police around him. Yes, he said. The next day I was in Gershon's office. We found Klein, he said. He's told us everything. Bill Gershon smiled at me. Thanks, Flick, he said. Thanks for everything. I'm sorry. Forget it, I said, smiling. I said goodbye to Gershon and the others, to Jeff and Teresa, and to Janine Anderson's parents. Thank you, said Jean Anderson. Thank you so much. Then I got in my red Chevy and drove out of Pinecrest and onto the highway. I looked back at the beautiful Rocky Mountains. The mountains were white and the sky was blue. Life was almost good. Janine Anderson's killer was dead. Ricky Klein was going to prison for 20 years and Alpine Resorts was finished. Better than that, Clark Johnson, governor of Colorado, was finished too. He could never be president of the United States now. I thought about Scott. I could feel him smiling at me. "Good work, Flick," I could hear him say. And, perhaps best of all, I thought, Eddie Lang was going to prison for a very long time. Yes, life was good. I was in my red Chevy, and life was good.